everybody. I'm Jesse, and welcome to another edition of Gen X Thinks Deep Dive. Today we're going to talk about language, and specifically the manipulation of our language. And I've seen this going on for a while now, and it's really Orwellian to me. 1984 style thought crimes, thought police type of stuff. And it's definitely happening. There's no argument. Whether it's happening on purpose, who is the driving force behind this, I don't know, but I find it concerning. I have a suspicion that it's not just the United States that this is happening in. I think it's happening in, other countries as well, non-English speaking countries, France, Germany, Norway. I believe this is happening across the Western civilization. Before I get into the details of this, I want to point out that I'm going to touch on a variety of subjects, but this deep dive is not about any of those subjects. It's about language. So if I touch on gender or race or whatever your hot button topic is, I have to touch on these things because language touches everything. To make my point, I have to talk about certain things. And, this isn't about race or gender or any of that other stuff. I can do a deep dive on that later, and we can get into that. But this is about language. That's what this deep dive is about. If one of the subjects I bring up upsets you, then I appreciate it if you just save that for the deep dive that addresses that certain topic. So, language manipulation, which has basically been going on for decades now. It's subtle but it's pervasive, and it's entering our vocabulary and our lives almost without noticing it. But once you think about it and someone points it out to you, it's very obvious. Now, back when we were kids, we had our language of our own: dude, gnarly, bogus, spaz. We had these words that we used and we changed the meaning of words to be cool and stuff. But that was fad. It was just our generation did with those certain words, and then it kind of went away. Now we kind of use those words here and there as we've grown up, but the biggest part of that has gone away. Before that, it was the boomers with groovy and disco and stuff like that. They had their own stuff, and before, each generation had their own cool words that they used, their own slang. Okay, but that goes away as the generation ages. For the most part, it goes away. Now, what I'm talking about is different. And I thought that it was, just a generational thing at first, but it hasn't. These words have come into our lives and into our vocabulary, and they've changed the definitions of words that we have known our entire lives, or made up new words and stuff like this, and they haven't gone away. They keep using this stuff and beating it into our brains that this is what this is, and this is, and I'll go into detail explaining my thoughts on this here. Now, the first time I remember having this idea about it, thinking about it, is the first time I heard somebody say the word racist. I just yesterday, in preparation for this, I did a little research. I looked up the word racism in the Webster's dictionary. Now, racist means someone who believes that their race is superior to all others. Period. That's it. So, the last real racists that I knew of were the Nazis, and probably the skinheads. They had this group of skinheads, I think maybe the late 70s and 80s or something like that. They were a skinhead group, and they were actual Nazis or something. But they might have been racist too. But other than that, there aren't any real racists. I mean, if you heard somebody saying that now, that they believe that their race is superior to all others, they would just sound loony. They would sound daffy. You wouldn't even give them the time of day. I don't care what color they were. Most of us are mixed of some kind nowadays. So to call someone racist, I know myself, I have two races, two bloodlines in me. I can't, which one do I pick? Most people nowadays probably do. There are very few just pure, 100% of one race anymore. We're all kind of a mixture. We're all mutts, which is great. Awesome. But that kills the idea that there are racists. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into any one subject, but that just to point that out. We're using the word racist now because everyone knows that racists are horrible. But we're using it as a club to batter people into silence. If you say anything that I don't like, I can just call you a racist. And you got to shut up. Because even you arguing with me about it is racist. So you're just digging yourself a deeper hole. When, by the definition of the word, I can't. I'm an idiot for saying it to you. So for calling you a racist, I'm not even making sense. But that's the way it is now. Another thing is the whole man is a woman thing. All right, that guy, Matt, I forget his last name right this second, but Matt, somebody over there on Daily Wire, he came up with this whole idea of asking these people, what is a woman? And they can't answer the question because to answer the question defeats everything that they're pushing, everything that they say. It erases their agenda. So they get stuck in this, like, whoever wants to be a woman's a woman. Man and woman, the definition of those two words is being erased, eradicated, and just it's like confusing now. How can that be confusing? The most basic biological thing that we've known throughout the history of humanity now is confusing all of a sudden. It doesn't make sense. Where is this stuff coming from? Where are these ideas coming from to manipulate our language? Instead of just sticking to the words that make sense, prejudice in the racist category, in the race category, prejudice, it made sense. I could be prejudiced against Christians or Catholics, or, well, Catholics are Christians, but I could be prejudiced against Mormons or, white people or whoever. You could be prejudiced against a group of people, is my point. Any group of people you want, you can be prejudiced against. But you cannot be racist against a certain group of people. You can't. Not by the definition of the word. But they want to change the definitions of things and confuse us and pit us against each other. Now, here's another, going back to the race thing. Now, if some person A is prejudiced against white people, right, then Hispanics can't be mad at person A because he's prejudiced against white people, right? But if person A is a racist, then Hispanics can be mad at him too. You understand? You follow that logic? So it's getting everybody angry at everybody with this racist thing instead of just, calling it out like it is. That guy's a prejudiced dick. Nobody associate with him. He's obviously got a screw loose or something. He's prejudiced. We knew that back in the 80s, that it made sense. Now it doesn't make sense anymore. Just like the gender thing doesn't make sense anymore. There's no number. There used to be 2 genders. Now there's, I don't know, anywhere between 3 and infinite. It's just whatever you want. It's this fluid jumble of things. You can be a cat. You can be a dog, a giraffe, an alien, whatever. You can be a desk. And this is sowing confusion and division into our society. And I don't blame the people who are doing it as much as I do the people who are pushing it, who are teaching them this stuff. And that is how powerful language is. Because that is how we interact and understand the entire universe is with language. Everything is filtered through language. If you see a new object and you don't have a name for it, it's confusing. But if you already have a name for it and you understand the definition of that name, then you know what it is. Oh, that's what that is? Okay, I got it. That's a curdle flump. Okay, it does XYZ. Yeah, I know that. Okay, I've just never seen one before, but yeah, I know what it is. But if you don't know that word, if you don't know the definition of that word and you see one, you're just flabbergasted. You're fuddled. You're I don't know, whatever. So that's how important language is. And that's how, and whatever this is, this movement, this attack, this invasion of our language, I believe it has a purpose. I believe it's done purposefully. This isn't accidental. All of this stuff coming at the same time. Another one. Trust the science, we're told. Now all of a sudden we're told to trust the science. Science is this thing now that, like religion, that cannot, it just, you don't question it. It just is. Since science was invented until now, science has been the act of questioning science. That is what it is. It questions itself constantly. It questions the universe. Science is questioning. Science is the lack of trust. But now we're being told, just trust the science. Except when it comes to XY chromosomes and stuff like that, then you're supposed to ignore the science. We don't talk about that science. That biology. Don't, trust the science. We tell you to trust. Trust the science. That statement, trust the science, is a complete inversion of logic. It's turning logic upside down and inside out on itself. Another subject I had to do a few minutes research on, all natural in food. You can see the label, all natural. How does the FDA define all natural? Does it mean it's not covered in pesticides? No, doesn't mean that. Even though pesticides aren't natural. Does it mean that it's completely unprocessed and doesn't have any weird things done to it that aren't natural? No, doesn't mean that. It just means that the key ingredients in the all-natural food weren't made, industrially by man. They're not a chemical or a thing like that. The key ingredients. So all-natural chicken or whatever can be slathered with all other kind of stuff. It can be injected with hormones, antibiotics, all this stuff can be, but the chicken itself came from a real chicken. It wasn't made by man. Now everything else on and in the chicken and all that stuff can be whatever they want it to be. So that's another place that they manipulate our language to make us think one thing when it's completely another. It's not all natural. You think all natural means that everything in that can or in that package is natural. It's not. Probably 100% never. But I'm going to say 99% never. And you see the eggs. They say cage free. Okay, what does that mean? That means that they're raised in a dark building and there's no wire cage around them. Do they run around free? You hear that word free, cage free. That means there's no wire involved. There's no wire cages involved. They're still just as cooped up, just as, they were fed the same amount of antibiotics and hormones and all this stuff. It's cage free means absolutely nothing. Now, free range, I think by the FDA standards, free range means they have to be outside in the sunlight like 2 hours a day or something like that. You can look it up if you want. I didn't look that one up, but it's something like that. So they've got this cage that they go out into for a couple hours a day, then they come back in. But they don't get to run around there. It's not like what we picture. They're running around and living happy lives and making their nests and out in the bushes and these earth-loving hippies go collect the eggs in a natural way. It's not like that at all. We're being manipulated and lied to with our language. And I read an article where this person was writing about Gen Z and how when people use full stops in their texting, it upsets Gen Z, and Gen Z gets all angsty over it because it's a microaggression and all this. And the first thing that hit me was, what the hell's a full stop? I've never used a full stop on anything. What is that? Typing out the word full stop? What even is that? But through reading the rest of the article, through the context of the article, I figured out that they meant punctuation. Why don't you just say punctuation? What is this? What is this full stop stuff? Why can't I? Anyway, but all this microaggression and all this stuff, these words they're adding to the vocabulary about microaggressions, and us Gen Xers using the thumbs up is a microaggression toward Gen Z, and all this stuff to try to pit Gen Z against Gen X and the boomers against the millennials and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Which is kind of fun. I'll admit that. I mean, it's fun, picking, but it's fun picking on Gen Z, just like it's fun picking on my nephews. It's fun. I pick on my nephews. It's fun picking on Gen Z. Y'all, I mean, you know what I'm saying? But they're seriously getting upset and wanting to argue with this, and it's over the language. They're microaggressive. How? You're not going to be able to convince me that an entire generation, 100%, or even a large percentage of them, really get upset over the thumbs up emoticon. I just don't believe that. Call me a crazy conspiracy theorist, call me what you want, but I don't believe that upsets them as much as the media makes it out to be. I think quite a few Gen Zers just see it and keep going. Now, you're going to have your vocal minority who are going to cry about their microaggressions and stuff. I understand that. I'm not saying that all of them. But most of them, I would say, don't give a shit about a thumbs up emoticon. Or if somebody else puts a period at the end of their sentence, I don't think that would upset them because they don't want to. But take that and follow that road down and see where that ends up. If you follow that road where, like Gen Z now, they have no punctuation at all, just one long kind of spaghettified, incoherent sentence that the receiver has to interpret, okay? And take that a couple generations down the road. Now, that long spaghettified, confusing crap is going to be old school, like punctuation is now. So now 2 generations down from Gen Z, they'll be communicating in squeaks and grunts and stuff, and looking up at the old Gen Zers' long run-on sentences like that's a super microaggression. And this is all that 1984 Orwellian thought control. Because if you can control the language, you can control how people think. And they're doing it in other countries. In Canada, they've passed laws to where they can I don't know if it's fine them or lock them up, but you can get in trouble if they think you might post hate speech in the future. Now that's just a fact. You can look it up. Now, here recently over there in the UK, they threatened to extradite any Americans who post anything they deem as hate speech on X or Facebook or whatever. So what is hate speech? Well, hate speech is anything they don't like. Those vague terms, hate speech. Now, that's anything I think is hateful. What I think is hateful is going to be completely different than what somebody else thinks is hateful. What I think is hateful is, I don't know. I don't think much is hateful, pointed at me anyway. I don't. Why the hell would anybody hate me? I'm Gen X. I rule. But if you go down, imagine that, 20 years down the road. These are snowballs that are keep getting worse and worse. They don't get better. They don't pull back on that and say, "Oh, we were wrong. We were wrong on that whole hate speech thing. We'll just erase that and so we'll start over." No, here's all your rights and freedoms back. No. They never do that. Never, never in the history of the world has a government returned the rights and freedoms to the people. It will never happen. And you think that I point out Canada and UK and Australia over there. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything recently about Australia, but their government's out of hand too over there with that stuff. But we're not far behind them, and we're ahead of them in some other ways. Yeah, believe me, they're looking at us in other areas and saying, "I can't believe that Americans are putting up with that crap." Yeah. Misogyny is another one. I've heard this in interviews and stuff, not once, many times, but a woman call a man a misogynist because he had refused to date another dude that thought he was a woman. All right? And then the lady called that guy misogynist. That's another word they're twisting around. Misogyny. All right? When a man refuses to date another man, that is literally the opposite of misogyny. Misogyny is a man who hates women. Now, if I refuse to date another dude because I love women, you can't call that misogyny in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you can, but it's not real. You're just falling down that Orwellian rabbit hole of thought police, weird thought crime, weird stuff like that. And it doesn't make sense, but it's happening and it's getting worse. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And we're either going to start pushing back against this stuff and trying to make it right again, or we're just going to let the snowball just pass us on by. When our time comes and we're gone from this earth, that snowball's going to be out of control. Pandering to these young people who are being manipulated by institutions, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's in their best interest to pander to their insecurities and their microaggressions. I'm going to microaggress. I'm going to get them used to it. I'm going to thumbs up and put periods and exclamation points at the end of my shit until I die. I'm going to say, "Yes, ma'am," "No, ma'am," "Yes, sir," "No, sir." I'm going to be a real human being until the day I die. And if I can pass that on to as many Gen Zers and Gen Ayers or whatever, then that'd be great. But that's my take on it. And as a off-topic thing real quick, has anybody noticed that they've named the younger generations after us? You got the boomers, Gen X, then millennials, all right? But then after that, they just started with letters. Gen Z, Gen A. If we hadn't been coming up on the millennium, the new millennium, millennials would have been Gen Z. That's the only reason they got tagged with millennials, because we were coming up on the new millennium. But now they're just going with the letters after Gen X. They just love the term Gen X so much that they just started going with that, I guess. I don't know. But that just struck me as a curious thing. All right, I'll leave you there. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below with your thoughts on the subject. And the subject is language and the manipulation of our language, especially if you're in another country. I really want to hear from people in other countries to see if this is an attack on the entire Western civilization or just the English-speaking ones. Okay? That'd be really interesting to find out if I'm right about that. If you'd like to support the channel, You can do so by tapping on the super thanks button down there below the video, or you can jump over to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee and buy me a cup of coffee, and I'll put that link down in the description. If you're interested in Gen X gear, we've got some cool stuff over at Redbubble, and I'll put that link down in the description as well. And if you can't or don't want to support the channel in any of those ways, you can always do so by sharing these videos on your social media. That really helps a lot, and I thank you for that. I really appreciate it. If you have any ideas for future episodes of Gen X Thinks Deep Dive, please put those down in the comments, or you can email me. The email's over on the channel page. And as always, stay frosty, Gen X, and I'll see you on the next one.